The first question I always get is, well, how do I know if I have a Copilot license or I don't have a license? The easiest way to do is what I tell everyone, go to office.com. And if your organization has sort of enabled you guys to use Copilot, on your left, this is what we call the rail. So everything on the left-hand side of here is called the rail. You will see a Copilot icon. If I have a license, I will see something called work. If I don't have a license, you're just given access to the web version, which is the equivalent of you using ChatGPT. I can ask it any question I want. It'll go out to the internet and give me a response back. The next question you're probably asking is, well, why would I use that versus using ChatGPT? Well, if I want to upload information about my organization, if I've got corporate data or something like that, anything uploaded in here is still sort of contained in your tenant. So there's protection on that file. So this financial information, I'm not just sending this out to the internet. It's in a protected, it's in your tenant, it's environment. So this is new. About a month and a half ago, we gave ChatGPT or Copilot Chat free for anyone that has an Entra ID. So how many of you in the room have an Entra ID over here?
What's interesting?
Everyone. And that's where I was going to go. So if you've got an email address at company.com, have an Entra ID. That's by default. Go back to what I'm drawing over here is when you sign up for a tenant, I've got a new company, I want email on Microsoft, I want to host my services. Then you buy any license. It could be a business premium license, E1, E3, E5. It's sort of like a birthright. You get a bunch of these sort of modules within that tenant. For example, if Adam is an employee of me, I create an account for him. He gets created in here called Entra ID, and then I can sort of manage and give him or her whatever permission. Create you a mailbox. I can give you access to Teams. I can give you access to SharePoint, Forms, Planner. You might have heard some of those tools up there. What is also happening in this tenant is something that's called the Graph API. So this green lines that I'm drawing, think of it as sort of the veins and the neural system in your body. Independent, right? My legs are independent from my hands, but they are still sort of aware of each other and they can work together in cognizant. This is good. So how many of you over here have a Netflix subscription? If you have maybe a YouTube subscription. So now I've got an identity for Netflix. I've got an identity for YouTube. I may have different subscriptions, things like that going on. But I've got different points of entry. I've got all these different usernames and logins. It's kind of hard for each of the applications to know. In the Office 365 ecosystem, right, there's only one point of entry, which is the Entra or Entra ID, which used to be formerly known as the Active Directory, if you've heard of that in the past, or Azure Active Directory. Very famous for renaming our products. So sometimes the challenge is keeping up with that. What this also does is we've got something called Defender. We've got something over here called Purview. The Defender has a SKU of products. Within that, it's called Defender for identity. So it monitors where I'm logging in from and things like that. So if I logged in this morning from Houston, 2 hours later, there was a login from Tokyo. Well, I know teleportation doesn't exist yet, so there was no way for me to be in contact later. That is something that we travel, and it would block the user from signing in. So that's the sort of protection you get for the entire tenant when we say, yeah, you kind of want that. On the purview side, right, if I create a document today, I want to be able to label that document. And when I mean labeling, I can say this document is a public document, or it's internal, or it's highly confidential, or whatever it is. Highly confidential, make sure my users can share this outside my environment, things like that. I'll show you an example. If I try to launch I just tried to create a brand new document. But if you realize there's a small icon on the top over there that says general. What this means that Microsoft automatically has applied a label to this document, protecting it and saying this is a general document. If I start typing in a social security number or bank account number or something like that, it has the ability to say, I've got sensitive information in this document. I'm going to change this to confidential, so I don't accidentally share this outside my environment.
Does it know to change automatically?
Yes. So inside Purview, we've already pre-built some models that will automatically detect US passport numbers, social security numbers, New Zealand passport numbers, and things like that. But we're also aware that, hey, if you're working in the medical field or something, you might be using some sort of serial number, alphanumeric that we're not aware of. But you can add that to the catalog and say, this is my company's serial number policy. I'll have you upload some documents. It learns through that, and then it applies those labels.
So by labeling confidential document, is that mean it prevent you from sending email to whoever you need to send?
So you can do multiple things. You can say, if it's got a label called highly confidential, I want to block this from sharing it with external users. I might be able to share it with anyone within my company. Or you can say, I don't want Copilot to go scrape any of these documents. For instance.
But I can always make an attachment to email to someone. So the system would not restrict me.
You can attach it to your email, but then it will detect it and say, this has got a sensitivity label on it. I'm not going to allow you to send this email. Now you might say, I can just put this on a flash drive, run home, and connect it to my computer. Guess what's going to happen? I launched that document. It's going to go straight up to Azure and say, not so fast. You are not the owner of this document. Sign in with your credentials and let me see if you've been given access to this. Kind of neat. This was released years and years ago. And back then it used like the on-prem servers and things. There was ways you can get around it, but if you plug this into a computer, doesn't matter if it ever came back to the corporate, it just goes straight out to the internet. I need you to connect, validate who you are.
Is this the same if this document is in the OneDrive as well?
This document is in OneDrive, right? So
We have to classify those.
So this is automatic classification. All I did is I just opened up Word on my computer and I hit new document. By default, it's giving it a label. So does this cause any problems? Good and bad, right? You got to find that right balance, because sometimes I'll send something to a customer. They might say, I can't open up this attachment. Can you resend it again? And then we realize, okay, we put the wrong label on. So you do have the ability to go ahead and change the label of a document and say, oh, no. If you've accidentally classified this as highly confidential, I want to change this to maybe a public document. And then you have to give a reason why it was changed. And that is recorded in the back end in Purview and says, Ramas came in today. He took this very sensitive document and changed the policy on it, and it was shared with an external user. So now there's a trail of change, and then it was shared out. You can set up your policies for environment and say, don't let users even change it. It just all depends on.
We're gonna ask about permissions. Is it attached to approvals or not?
You can also attach it to approvals. You can say, if someone wants to change a document that's highly confidential, make sure you get approval from the owner of the document. Then he or she would get an email and says, I changed options on this. And what you're seeing over here, this labels, sensitivity labels, is something out of the box that we've created. You can find this documentation on our website if you guys want to implement this. But you can also create subsections out of this. So if I click on this over here, there's non-business, which means, okay, it's just a file. There's public, which means there might be some information, but it's accessible to the public. Here in role, there's confidential, and then you can have subcategories on there. So we've got Microsoft Extended, Microsoft full-time employees only, and then recipients only. So you can cater this however you want. My advice is try and keep it simple so users are not, well, and there's so many options, I don't know what to pick. Apply a general label. So why is this important, and what does this have to do with with Copilot? The first question everyone asks, they come over here is, I want to give Copilot to my users, but I've got so much documentation and so many SharePoint sites, I'm afraid they might have access to something they shouldn't have access to. And that's a fair assessment. Given this is a fairly technical group, how many of you have used SharePoint?
You're stuck using it?
Are you stuck using it?
You see, it automatically has SharePoint, right? So you're stuck using it.
Sorry, not sorry.
No, it's okay. We have real SharePoint too, but just,
So there used to be a tool called SharePoint Advanced Management, which used to be an add-on that says, okay, for $5 per user per month, give you some of this additional security feature. We can monitor all your SharePoint sites. Okay, tell me if there's any sensitive documents in it. Tell me if I'm oversharing company information outside with the world. However, last month we made an announcement that said, if you've purchased 10,000 M365 Copilot licenses, doesn't matter, I'm going to give this to you for free. Protect your data. Even if you've got one user in your 10,000 seat organization, you can use this SharePoint Advanced Management, look at your all your SharePoint sites, and then you can say, hey, I've got this site that's got confidential information. They're shared with 10 people outside the organization. I can stop that. I've got sites that only have one owner or haven't been used in the last 5 years. There's no owner, the person that had it before has left. I want to delete take this, archive this data. So we're kind of giving you some of these tools for free, just because we're like, hey, from a security and compliance standpoint, we want to make sure that you're.
The SharePoint management, it's all about control and security, or is there any other features?
So there's more than just, yeah, so you can control and say for these sites, setting up that policy, that governance and things like that. So at Microsoft, if I create a SharePoint site today, immediately after a few minutes, I get an email that says, you need to set a policy for this, 60 to 90 days. Also, you need to have 2 owners for every SharePoint site. So tomorrow, if I leave or get hit by a bus or something, God forbid, someone else has ownership of this site. That's something I would recommend you guys should also sort of implement.
So the SharePoint Advanced Management for free that's huge. Is it the same product basically, or?
We're just giving
Is it everything? Yeah.
just like here for the admins, this is sort of like a godsend, and it's like, okay, thanks, we can sort of manage the.
You'll also have to require multiple owners of a team in Teams, because technically that's SharePoint behind the scenes.
Ideally, you should be doing the same thing. So for the folks not aware, every time you create a team in Teams, Microsoft Teams, the backend is creating a SharePoint site for you to store all that information. Ideally, yes, follow best practices. I'm talking naming convention. Apart from that, 2 owners. I'd probably have 2 owners. Don't have another owner, make your SharePoint administrator the sure he'll. And then also set the retention policies, right? Say, hey, after 3 years or 5 years or 6 years, you need to keep this data in. It's a famous saying, like garbage in, garbage out. So if I'm feeding the Copilot with old, stale data, I ask it a question about my data, guess what I'm going to get? Stale data.
If you put date on the document, would Copilot be smart enough to give me the latest file based on the date? If they have multiple versions of the same document?
So yes and no. I've seen it work in both scenarios. Sometimes, like if the file names have the dates in them, we'll try and get the latest date. But I've also seen versions where, hey, you pull the wrong information over here. Reasoning behind it, because it's sort of the old mentality of, I'm going to take a document, save it today's date. If I make changes tomorrow, I'm going to change the file name or save as the following date. That's not something we recommend in SharePoint. There's a reasoning, there's a versioning and history in a document. Doing that for you, save that document. So, yeah. So the best practice moving forward, if you're not doing that already, is you've got old versions, delete them. Try and keeping the most latest.
Let's say if you follow the best practice based on what you described by let SharePoint manage the version for you, would Copilot be smart enough to use the latest version?
What if I want to Copilot to compare the latest version with the previous version?
So you can upload.
I just have one file and then I rely on SharePoint version. Okay, and then I'm access the latest one and I want to know, okay, please compare to me the latest version with the previous version.
So right now, if you open up in Word, you can look back and hit track changes and it tells you what changed. Necessarily need Copilot for that. I can do track changes and I'll show you. So me and you share the document, I can go there and say, show me what's been changed. Now, can you do some sort of summarization or something like that? Maybe I haven't tried that out yet. A good use case. So if I come down over here and I click on work, and now if I ask it a question, and because it's part of the graph, I can say, tell me about a meeting I had yesterday with Adam. And what it will do is it'll go through my email, say, okay, Adam sent you XYZ. Also had a meeting with him, and he also sent you a chat message about X, Y, and Z. And I don't have to tell it to look at different sources, like I don't have to upload a file or go into Outlook. It has some contextual awareness that me and him work together, and we work through Teams, Outlook, or OneDrive or something. How many of you in here actually use the Teams meeting recordings and recap functions or anything? So for the folks that have not used that, I call this the waffle maker, also known as the app launcher. So if you're ever curious as, hey, what's included in my licensing? You just go to office.com, click on this. This shows you all the apps that you have access. Okay, this is kind of neat way. So a month or so ago, I kind of wanted to showcase what happens if you've got Copilot and Teams Premium in a meeting, and how can it enhance your sort of meeting experience. So I took two phones and I just created two chat bots, and I said, let's pretend this is an interview. I recorded that conversation, and that's what's over here as an interview. So I can go right now, I can create a meeting, go to meeting options and hit record and transcribe this meeting. And at the end of the meeting, if I go back to the chat, you're going to see something like this. If you've noticed, I've got the entire recording of this meeting over here. It's also broken up by the speakers that were in the meeting. It tells me when Sarah spoke, when I spoke during the meeting. If you guys have spoken about different topics, it can also break that down by topics. If this is a 2, 3, 4 hour meeting, it can also break it down by chapters. So going to some of these learning events and they're talking about multiple products, you might say, I don't care about X, Y, and Z. I'm just here to learn about this, but I missed the meeting. But now if you have access to the recording, I can jump straight to that. Just kind of neat.
Good question.
Yep.
How do you get to this? So during the meeting, you record, right?
Correct.
And then at the end of the meeting, you generate the summary on the discussion.
So it automatically generates a summary for you. As long as you say record and transcribe,
Transcribe.
you'll get that.
Where's,
So-
where's the transcribe button? Could you show that, please?
We've already started the recording for this meeting specifically. So you don't see the start, you just see the start and then stop transcription.
Yeah, if you're in a large organization, you might have to fill out a snow ticket like I do to get recording permission, so the bugs won't be there, so,
Good call.
yeah.
And so why do we have the two options? Why is there record and then why is there also transcribe? Some organizations might say, I don't want you recording anything for me. It's against our policy. But then you can ask them, is it okay just to transcribe the meeting? So it's only taking closed captioning of what's happening in the meeting. Once the meeting is done, it dumps the recording and says, I can give this to you anymore, but here's the transcription from the meeting, and I can generate notes for you from it.
But is there? I mean, the videos in the way of seeing what he was talking about.
Oh, yeah. He was showing the record and transcribe, right? Rooms.
Yeah, I was just showing the option of where it was.
Is there any way to like access, for example, add the shared, I don't know, the group to the meeting, to the each meeting, so I can access someone's transcript? So if we have a circle of meetings, like group of meetings in our organizations, and I want to like using the Copilot, get the access to the data that was discussed in the meeting that to which I weren't invited to. So is it possible?
So if you've got a recurring meeting that's happening with your group, access.
I'm not to this meeting. So
You're not invited.
just like if we have, I don't, maybe even not the recurrent meeting, but overall like in-person meetings happening between the group of people, like, but in person. So can I access the like transcripts of their meetings?
So by default, no, because of privacy.
Not by default, yeah, but like, can I
So
configure?
you have to go
Right.
back, yeah, so you have to go back to the owner of the meeting. Say, do you mind sharing recording and the transcription with me, and they can give you access.
And Copilot will read it and give me a response.
Yeah. So you would get the same view over here. And what's neat is if anyone was taking any notes during that meeting, they would show up over here. So this creates something that's called a loop component. So think of it as a fancy new OneNote. Anyone who's in the meeting can take notes in here. It then also creates a summary. This is AI-based summary. So this is Copilot doing the work for you. And I can click on mentions. And if my name was mentioned anytime during the meeting, I would show up over here and I can just click on my name and it would take me to that point in that recording. You say, I don't believe what the AI summary has given me, give me proof as to where this was in the timeline, I can actually go directly to that recording in time and listen to it. So for example, if I go over here and it says, hey, this is what was discussed, I've got a little Copilot button in the top right. If I click on this, now I can ask it any question about the meeting. I can say, so in this scenario, I was interviewing Sarah. Sarah was telling me about her work experience and things like that. Now I can go back and look at the transcript and look at the AI summary note, but I can also ask it questions. Now, this meeting happened 2 months ago. So I can say, give me a view of Sarah's So I didn't take any of these notes. This is what she might have said during the meeting. If she uploaded her resume or something like that during the meeting, it's giving me that context. And if you've noticed, there are numbers over here at every stage. These numbers, what they mean. I click on this, it's telling me, hey, Sarah talked about this, right? She spoke about her experience. If you go back to the recording of the transcript at 5 minutes and 38 seconds, I can prove that to you. So I'm not asking you to fully trust the AI, but I'm also giving you proof that you can validate.
So have you guys gone that far where you ask whether Sarah is better or Mike is better for the job?
So good question, and I can show you something what we're doing. So we'll talk a little bit about agents and custom copilots. I can tell Copilot, go look at this folder that I have job openings for. All my postings are in this folder. I also have a folder where I have a list of qualified candidates. Compare those resumes in there for me and tell me which candidate might be a better fit. My opinion, and I still think, the humans should still be present in making HR decisions and things like that. Now, versus going through 100 resumes, I might just have to go through 10 because some of the qualifications don't even. Like when we put job postings on here, and I think it's a good problem we have. I mean, within an hour or two, sometimes we get 500 resumes. Can you imagine what it takes for our HR teams to go through? So this kind of helps alleviate some of that white noise. There's also people using bots out there now to apply for jobs. So the moment a job posting comes up, someone's writing a bot to apply to it. So sometimes we get resumes that are like, this is not a match at all. Like, how? How does this even? So this helps clean up some of that white noise.
So all this is great, but as a company, how do I ensure that the data that I share with here is not being used by Microsoft to train their other stuff? That's my concern. So
Very good question.
there's a lot of data that my company.
This is just a small subset of the Microsoft ecosystem that I was talking about. All of this sits inside a tenant. Tenant is just a fancy name for saying this is a. None of your data is ever being used to train. You ask a question in Copilot, it says, okay, I'm going to use our AI's engine to reason over what I can do with it. It searches within your tenant and it is not training at all. Data that sits inside your environment is that's one that you give us explicit permission to say, we're having an issue. I'm going to let you into this small container over here to troubleshoot an issue. You don't have to let. We are a platform company, not necessarily a product. Sell you a box of Legos, build it, whatever your problems, help you fix your living. Famous saying is, if a product is free, you are a product. Here's your go model. Yes.
So you were talking about how the Copilot APIs are using OpenAI engine. You mentioned like 4.0 earlier, was that correct?
Correct.
And then you also mentioned how the Copilot agents also have advanced reasoning. So as 4.0 not being known for being a reasoning model, can I ask how you were able to kind of get to that point with?
And hold that thought, because when I go into agents, I'll talk about what we're doing a little bit more and how we can pick different models and things. Yes.
I mean, when I see this, like my company is so big, there's so much data, and every time you ask a question, it basically load all my company's like data into the context window and do it, or how does it index all of this?
So a combination of both. It has context of everything that's uploaded, SharePoint. Whether you have Copilot or you don't have Copilot today, I'll show you something. I'm just going to go to office.com. You see this search box over here? Everyone has access to this today. You don't need to have Copilot. As long as you have an email address with your company, what you type in that search box is everything that you have. Say, for example, you work engineering. You've been added to engineering SharePoint sites, or you've been given access, someone shared engineering documents with. When I use Copilot tomorrow and I'm searching for something, it's going to say, Chad, let me see what you have access to first. before even searching for anything, say, okay, you work with Crystal, work with Aramis. Now you search for something named engineering. I'm going to see if there's anything engineering related between the three of us. I'm going to check and see if you're part of any SharePoint sites, and that I'm going to give you that response back to you. I can also say, go check something on the web related to engineering. So then it says, okay, this data is not being trained for the model. Existing that search within the tenant using OpenAI engine to use and say, hey, let's put these words together.
I have access. Is loaded into that context window and it will do all the intelligent within the.
It is happening so quickly, yes. And
My access is really, really large, then how does Copilot deal with that?
So the model pre-trained with the data that contains the company?
the model is not necessarily pre-trained. So the reason why this is so expensive is because if you tried to build your own ChatGPT model or something like that today, you would need thousands of racks of servers to first post all the data. And then everyone's heard of NVIDIA over here. It's the company that makes the GPUs that makes all this thing run. The GPUs are so powerful in reading all this data. All that computation is happening on another 1,000 racks of servers, which is why we're building. Don't quote me on this, but I think we're officially now the largest construction company in the world because we're building so many data centers every week. Because we just can't keep up with pace. Because people are like, we're building this, we want more compute, we want constantly just keeping up. So we've had a good and a bit of a bad problem. If you're, again, this is Azure Group, but I've heard about, the whole VMware Broadcom thing coming. So we also have an influx of users coming over to the Azure stack. Also got an uptick in people using Copilot. So we're just struggling to keep pace right now.
I mean, just asking another way, it would say, if I go in and ask like the same questions, would Copilot be smart enough to kind of cache some of that, or it's gonna redo the whole thing again?
It's going to do that in seconds.
I think based on his question is because, as you're saying, it's gonna do all this processing live, and usually we are paying for processing, right? If we have a big company that has a lot of data, it's gonna process a lot of stuff. So this is gonna be a higher price, even though we were asking a silly question. If my database is big, it's gonna process a lot of stuff. So I don't know if that's kind of
I think
the main thing you wanna go.
$30 per user per month for Copilot gives you the same performance 10 times a day with 10 terabytes of data, or if you use 1 time a day.
I'm afraid of bankrupting Microsoft team. Right, because I mean, company has a lot of data. What if I'm the CEO who has access to my entire company's data, and then every time I ask a question, like, wow.
I'm sure there's people also above my pay grade who do a really good job on finding the best ways to go to schematics. Sure, we've thought.
Your CEO is asking different questions than you are.
I'm sure, but, so the fact that,
I have a question for the background, because we use Copilot, and I agree with you, and then I can testify that's very quick, so doesn't matter. My questions more relate to, because we need to do some processing in the back end, right? So if I create a new file, we have to vectorize this file, tokenize, and put in a vector database. That's the reason this. What is the time window between I create a document and then it's available, because it's not instant?
Good question. So for the folks that didn't hear what his question was, is how long does it take for Copilot to recognize or upload a file to SharePoint? Is it available in? So I'm going to give you a consulting answer to that, which is it depends. We don't typically publish out how long it takes. It can be anywhere sometimes from 10 minutes. How big the file is. And I would say if it's sitting in a SharePoint site, it's good. Upload all your files over there. Takes it just I think short answer is hour.
That's one of my experience with Copilot, because some users, they just upload a file.
Yeah.
They go to Copilot and ask a question. They believe that the information is up to date.
Yeah.
And then the answer that Copilot is giving, it's dated.
It's the, yeah. So in a scenario like that, where I wanted to reason over a document, in the prompt itself, I can upload. Hey, look, and answer this question. So go back to Copilot over here. Just say, tell me about, and I'm just going to press the / button. If you've noticed now, I've got a couple options over here. I can narrow my search down to a person. I can narrow my search down to maybe files that I drive. Or maybe even if I've had a meeting that was recorded, I can say, hey, go look at this meeting and tell me X, Y, Z, or whatever happened in this. Or I can also have it look at a bunch of emails, have it analyze that information in there. So in your case, I would say you can use either one of these, or you can just directly upload the file by clicking on this guy over here. And I can upload it from my computer, or I can attach it if it's.
So will this work with other non-Microsoft products like Zoom?
So short answer is no. I've recorded a meeting and it was in Zoom. I can take that recording, put it in my OneDrive, and have it analyzed. You do that for a lot of reasons. Well, also, I don't think Zoom wants us. It's just that we operate in sort of our ecosystem.
The meeting notes from Teams, can those be synced with Dynamics CRM?
Yes, so there's a couple of products that we've also sort of released called Copilot in Sales, which kind of looks like emails that you've had with the customer, any meetings that you've had with the customer, it summarizes those notes. And if you're using Dynamics today as your CRM, it will put that in there for you. I'm going to go a few steps back. How are we doing on time?
Yeah, we have an hour at most for us. Keep the questions coming, everyone.
I know I talked about there's 100-something plus Copilots now. Reason being, what I just showed you today was Copilot in Microsoft 365, that whole system. So that is Copilot in a product. Then we also have Copilot for a service. What does that mean? If I'm using that same question that was just asked, if I'm using a different sort of CRM system, I wanted to go tap information from that CRM. I wanted to look at emails, different connectors, right? I'm touching different products. So we've built some Copilots for you. Yeah, you can do this. And if you get sales, automatically we know how Dynamics looks because it's our product. So got that plumbing already pre-built in. There's also Copilot. Like, what's this Copilot devices? Is it just a marketing term? Is that everyone's using? Yes and no. So without going into too much detail, I just feel like given that this is a fairly technical group, we're eager to learn. I go to my task manager on my computer. everyone knows what task manager is, right? In the computer, where I go to kill a program because it's not, and you go here. On the left, if you go to your performance tab, today, you would typically have CPU, which is the brains of your computer, the amount of memory that this computer runs, and your hard drive space. So you got your Wi-Fi, you might have a GPU and things like that. What you might not see is this guy right here. It's called the NPU. It's called a neural processing unit. Remember I talked about NVIDIA earlier on how they do all that processing for us in Copilot. But you might say, I've got a very specific use case. Rather than using ChatGPT's big model, OpenAI's big model, but they also offer these small models called O1, O1D or something like that. Can I take that, put it on a computer, and because I don't have internet connectivity, because this might be at a big site or something like that outside the ocean or maybe field service, can I have it reason or pick up telemetry data from an and do some analytics and things? These Copilot devices, yes, I can make my own sort of model deployed locally on the machine using that NPU. That's where we're going. Copilot. Even when I'm doing my Teams recording and things like that, it's leveraging that NPU. I can do it faster rather than eating CPU and slowing down. Okay. Everybody good? Questions? Are we on pace? Am I going too fast? Just.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
You mentioned the machine. So how do they load the data into that device you talked about?
So this is when I created locally on my machine. So those are specific use cases. Like for example, let's just say I've got 10 pumps sitting in Midland that are collecting telemetry data. I have all of this connected to a small networking switch. Then I have my laptop connected to that switch that's pulling all that data. I can store it in a database locally on the machine, and I can create an agent that's like, go talk only to this database and tell me what's happening in 10 of these pumps. Also tell me there's anomalies sort of with the data that you have.
Are you talking about the ERP system?
Talking about ERP system, this is more like IoT, Internet of Things.
Would this be considered a small language model, and then would it be able to mimic, for example, a O3 mini or something?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. So, and I'm sorry for not giving that context. So when we say LLM, we're thinking of a large language model, like you're saying, like there's so much data, I want to reason over it. But sometimes I'm like, I don't need all this data. So I can use a smaller engine, just called an SLM, small language model, and say, hey, I'm building you specifically for looking at telemetry data and focus just on. So I can put that.
Got one more question.
Yes.
For Copilot for service, right? So Copilot can be connected with Salesforce or some other cloud as well and get some informations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so that's where I'm going to go a little bit into agents and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone clear about Copilot in Office 365 and how that works and things like that? Good. Okay. Yes.
What you said earlier make me think, whenever you have telemetry data, that's like, that's time series data. Usually you take that time series data and you spend a lot of time building a model, like a REMA model or an LSTM model time series. So are you saying that the Copilot can actually take that data and build a model on the fly without?
This is the data that's coming. Help you build a graph.
We can get data from the SCADA network.
I think the thing is, It doesn't, I think the data you're looking for more like the database type of data,
No, I mean,
like Snowflake, data warehouse.
no, I'm thinking of like building a model, right?
Yeah.
Because you look at the telemetry and then you build a model. And then from that model, then you can start inferring stuff. And usually in the past, we learn machine learning and we take time series data and you spend a lot of time churning and create a model and then you infer, stuff. And here it's just like, okay, you load the model. And I mean, I didn't hear from you whether, that's a REMA model, is in part of it that allow you to do that or.
Yeah, so the steps to get to that, maybe we should take this offline.
No, sorry.
And so, and then we'll run. I'm happy to talk about it, and I'll show you what we're doing with customers. Just because necessary.
I just had one quick question online. Do admins manage Copilot in a separate admin console, or is it an M365 admin console?
So if I'm an administrator today in my tenant, if I just go to the again, this is the demo environment, so I can happily show you what. I now have a admin or a Copilot button in my room. From here, I can manage everything. So no, it's to answer your question, it's not a separate admin console. Everything is in your admin center right here. I can view what my users are using for, what options. Can they see what you're specifically searching for? Not necessarily, and they shouldn't, right? But yeah, so now you've got usage metrics. I think $30 a user per month, you can say, I can justify this. My people are actually using this. Optional. I've got a slightly biased view on this, but I say, right, like a 5-year-old. You tell a 5-year-old don't do something, they do. They do absolutely that. You tell them don't use ChatGPT, use OpenAI, some Gen AI tools, they're going to do it. So give them Copilot Chat, which is for free. Say you can use this. This is in the confines of our environment, protected. If you don't give something like that to them, they're just going to go out to some of the third-party sites and they're going to infiltrate your data out third-party model.
Ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
If somebody is trying to justify the AI use within the firm or within the team, is that what you would direct us to use to show usage? Are there any other metrics that we can quickly give them?
I think that's a good place. We also have custom Power BI that we've built. You can just sort of take that and put that into your tenant, and it says, okay, here's a usage of Copilot in Word, Copilot in PowerPoint. You can actually say, go to your management and say, there you go. If you're wondering where Copilot is being used, then you can say they're using it in Teams to summarize meetings. Let's talk a little bit about agents. If you're wondering, what is agents and what's this thing on the left over here? If I want to create sort of like a Copilot that's focused on something specific, in this case, that's something over here that's called Northwind Traders Inventory. This is my CRM system. I want to go ask it and tell it, give me what's the balance on my inventory. This is just some back. I don't want to put that sort of like just in Copilot, just ask it. It's talking to multiple systems. So my folks that are on the front line, I can say, or maybe in a storefront, they can just use this agent on your phone and say, let's assume I'm selling shoes. So tell me this shoe and how much back, gets an inventory from your CRM system. That's what these agents are. Can you create your own agent? Absolutely. Why would you create your own? So let's say, for example, how many of you work hybrid or what is your policy of working from? It could be 3 days in the office or 3 days at home. What is the official policy of your company? That might be different than what your manager told you. So in that specific scenario, what if there was an agent over here called our agent? And that agent was only pointed to the official policy repository. I say repository, I'm talking maybe there's a SharePoint site that says HR policies. And now if I ask this agent, what is our work from home policy? I might get a different answer that says your work from home policy is only 2 days a week, not 3 days a week. So that's where we're kind of going on there and says, you can create these custom agents. I can show you how to quickly even create one on the fly. So everyone familiar with this? Just another SharePoint site. Yep. I'm going to go into documents, general, go to HR policies. And notice I've got a bunch of these different policies that are in over here. I can select all these documents from here. And now I have an option that says create an agent. Click on that. It says, what do you want to name your agent? I can pick our policy agent. Guess what? Now when I ask it about any questions about my official policy, 30 seconds, I've created a smart agent for HR. I don't have to reach out to my HR representative. These are going directly to that SharePoint.
Select the previous folder, so every time you upload a new document, it will be updated.
Yeah, I'll get to that in just a minute. So his question was, can I pick files that are outside this folder? And yes, you can.
An add-on to that is, what about if you add stuff to that folder later, will it update it since you didn't click it? Number one, and number two, is there a limit to the amount of agents that you can have?
So answer one is, because I created a custom agent and I selected just those files, it is only going to look at those files. If I update that document, it will update the agent. If I add a new file, no, because I haven't selected the new file on there. I'll show you how to solve that problem.
Okay.
Sorry, what's the other question?
The other question is there a limit to how many agents you can create, or would you even want to? Or is there a reason why not?
So I would say, don't open the floodgates for everyone to create agents. If you were first on board with Teams and everyone started creating their own, I don't know, that's sort of a giant. So narrow that scope down to a handful of users that can create the agents, managers and things like that. In a specific use case, because there might be another agent already someone's created out there that you can just maybe already.
What about document types? Is it
Word, PowerPoint, Excel, PDFs?
text file, TXT, text, just the plain text file?
I think you should be fine with text files as well.
Ways to categorize agents, because in our team, like you said, so many people are building agents, so they're like competing agents, and we don't know what is the official version that the team has to use.
So I can create an agent for me to publish it. So you want to lock that down and go to the admin. So create an approval process that says, if I create an HR policy, is this approved to everyone?
So in this example, can I create the agent and share this with the rest of the organization, but those people do not have access to my file?
Again, it respects your permission, all of that stuff in the ecosystem. So this is creating an agent in SharePoint. So if I've got multiple documents, like I got 10,000 files, I just wanted to ask questions on these 10 files, I can say, here's this repository, I'm going to ask you.
Does Copilot come with SharePoint, or you have to install that
No, if you got a Copilot license, this is available to you today.
So you have to have a license for Copilot.
You need to have a Copilot license in your tenant right now.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
What if you, by accident, your policy kind of mess up with some other documentation? Is that okay? The agent can still,
Elaborate.
yes, with maybe one is say I put the billing document and with my policy document together.
So when I ask the question and say, what is my work from home? I'm going to go through all their work from repository. So if you look at this example, there's nothing over here that says work from home. There's different types of policies in here, everywhere from data protection to compensation to termination. And there's nothing focused on work from home. I could have any kinds of files in here. But I'm creating a specific agent called HR that might, not just HR information, might have other information.
Will the agent pick it up even if somebody changes the name of the file?
Yep. I haven't confused you enough already. We're going to take this another step.
So when you create an agent, that one is put in the Copilot Studio invite.
So that is creating an agent within Teams in Copilot.
Is that part of the Copilot Studio? Because I know that used to be the Power Virtual Agents before.
Yeah.
So, and so you said about something about license. Is it different from the Power Virtual Agents?
Easy, medium. I mean, easy. I mean, I can go give Microsoft $30 a month. I get all of this Copilot in my products. Word, Excel, Outlook, Teams, perfect. I can go ahead and create out of the box. You don't have to do anything. $30 is all it's going to cost.
Per user?
Per user. Now you might say, I want to create something custom. I want to use everything in my 365, but I also want to connect it to my SAP data, Oracle. I also want to do some sort of automation. If you've heard of Power Automate and things like that, you said, I already have some Power Automates. Can I leverage some of that using these agents? Absolutely. I would build that over here in Copilot Studio. And I'll show you Copilot Studio here in just a minute. You can take this another step further and you say, Aramis, I like this ChatGPT or OpenAI for it's great, but I've got a specific use case. I like what Google's doing, Gemini, they've got this fancy model. Can I use that? Absolutely. We have something called AI Foundry. So this being an Azure group, this is more focused on the Azure side. It says, we'll give you all the servers in the world you want to build. You can pick your own model, your own sort of ChatGPT. You can set up your own automation and things. The world is your oyster. We'll still protect you using our data governance, keep everything within the tenant. But if you say, I want to build something from scratch, I found reasons.
Which Copilot do you have in the Azure? Like to create the Azure pipelines, resource groups and all those things, or?
Whatever models are public today, they're in the marketplace. I think there's 100 or something like that. You can.
Not one of those three.
Yeah, AI Foundry.
It's an AI Foundry.
AI Foundry has all that in Azure with the resource groups and all that. Yeah.
So you just pick whatever model. We've also got different services in there for like vision and so for example, right? Perfect use case would be, I've got a camera sitting out looking at an oil field or something like that. I want to detect air quality, temperature, if any cars are moving. And this camera is going to use leverage vision to capture all that information. Perfect use case. I can say I can use this model from Gemini or something like this different model, where I want to use the Azure Vision service and store all this information in a SQL server. You would go down the Foundry route, custom solution for you.
We're gonna create a resource group, put a storage account, start it on.
Building your own solution up there.
So it is where you have a lot of SaaS products, and then you want to consolidate all of that into some kind of control center.
Yeah.
Is that where the AI foundry would be?
So it gets a little bit tricky when we talk about I've got different SaaS products and I want to bring them all because all the SaaS products, the APIs might be different, right?
Right. I mean, that's how we do it now, but some vendors are trying to sell is where they are, wanted to connect to all of the vendors through a API, right? But then they just like a platform of just doing like.
Yeah, sometimes it just turns into kind of like.
Right, so does Azure have something like that we can do instead of?
So this is going to be very vendor specific or dependent. Everyone in here has heard of ServiceNow? For Microsoft, we are a big ServiceNow shop. So that laptop that you're seeing or that I'm using broke down, but the battery died on it like 6 months ago. So we have a help desk agent internally. I can just put in there and says, hey, my laptop is having this issue. I've already done this troubleshooting steps. I just want to don't want to talk to any IT help desk. Give me a replacement. So in there, we've got some automation, and because we work closely with ServiceNow, ServiceNow has these APIs that they've plugged in and says, you can ask questions like replace computer or create a ticket or update a ticket or delete a ticket. It automatically creates a ticket in ServiceNow for me and says, I've created a ticket for you to send you a replacement. The shipping label and stuff has been created by our procurement. They update ServiceNow. That same ServiceNow connector has gone back to my chat and says, Aramis, your ticket has been updated. Shipping information for your new. So can you do different SaaS products? Absolutely, but it's dependent on if they allow you some sort of information. I mean, some of the big players already have a lot of connectors because they're getting pressure. Customers saying, we want this integration. Give it to Microsoft. Well, then it's going to depend.
From a data and analytics space, I think Microsoft Fabric comes into play, where we integrate a lot of SaaS. So you could do like Salesforce, or if you have data stored in like AWS, for example, or Oracle, they have connectors that that are approved, and the APIs can be connected. Then you can visualize on top of it.
I'll be completely honest. Data sitting in different platforms, you can surface that data into Fabric, which is another solution we have. I don't need to replicate that data. I can just pull that information into Fabric and say, hey, remember the sales information that's coming from Salesforce? And then my customer information is in CRM. Let's try these in.
Fabric allows you to shortcut various sources and one is Amazon S3.
Oh. So the folks remotely can hear you.
Okay, so you can use shortcuts, or if you want to connect to databases, then you use what is known as mirroring. And that is very simple to set up. Then it's automatic. So it will sync your data between outside sources and Fabric automatically.
The key with Fabric is that all of the processes that work with it, to them, it's just like the data is right there, even though it could be anywhere. So
So AWS, GCP, it doesn't matter.
You know the concept of symbolic links in Unix, Linux, it's exactly the same concept.
The use case that we shared with us with ServiceNow is totally rely on REST API.
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
The use case that you shared with us, that's ServiceNow, and then you talk with the agent, relies entirely on REST APIs.
It's whatever ServiceNow has given us. It says you want to connect this into your Copilot.
MCP.
I don't think so. It's just expressing like. So ServiceNow builds all those connectors, and we just take it and says, okay, let's plug this into our.
Who wants to answer this question?
Sure, absolutely.
Which was, no, I don't. Thank you. So you asked whether you can create time series models like Rima, for example. You can. Yes. There is an add-on called Code Interpreter. If you're familiar with ChatGPT, it has had that for over a year. That has also been ported and brought into Microsoft Copilot. So you can upload your time series file and say, can you help me analyze this? And it will end up using all the data science model that you love, including Arima. Do a very good visualization and analytics on top of that.
And do prediction.
And do prediction. Wow. Now, there are agents coming into Copilot, analyst and deep research. And the analyst actually has gone several steps ahead of Code Interpreter. I don't have it yet, but I should have that within this month and maybe next month. Talk about it. Sure.
Talk a little bit about Copilot Studio. So I just went to Copilot Studio at Microsoft.com. And if you've got a license, I can take you to reviews, Power Automate, and things like that. Past this month. It's kind of familiar. It's sort of because it's kind of using that same sort of back. So over here, I can just naturally talk in natural language, right, and tell it what I'm trying to do. I mean, natural language. When you meet a person for the first time, do you say, "Oh, hi"? Starts with an H. Easy way to remember. On your keyboard, press the Windows key and H. Does anybody know what that does?
That's very.
Starts this narration tool. Just like I can actually just talk directly. That's what I've been telling everyone to do. So as you're using Copilot and things like that, you don't want to type in the entire question. Use the narration tool and just talk to it directly. See what it does.
So what did you just do? Press the.
Was that key conversation again?
It's Windows and H for hello. That's what I think I remember it. I want to respect copyright over here for anything that I'm going to show you right now. This is kind of an example I used a few months. I'm very passionate about cars and things like that, or fixing cars. So I was actively restoring my car that I drive every day. And it's kind of hard to get service for it because it's about 35 years old. So every time I would call a shop and I'd say, I'm looking for this part, or can you help me with this service? It was always like, we don't have any documentation. And then I found somebody in Germany who says, I've got like 1,000 pages of this documentation. Some of it is in German. You're more than welcome to have it. You know how to read German. So I said, that's fine. You can just send me whatever you have. And we sort of got early access to Copilot Studio. And I said, let me see what I can do. I was like, just send me everything you have. So sort of mimicked and created this in my demo environment for you to show you. I go down a bit. So I just created a SharePoint site. I went in and under documents, by the way, that's my, and all the service manuals that I was given, some of them were in English. I just uploaded them straight through. I used syntax and things like that, took some of the files, converted them from to English, uploaded all of that stuff. Now, how do I get Copilot to use all the documentation? You're focused just on this SharePoint site.
Good agent.
Sorry?
Good agent.
A computer, build an agent, yes, good answer. I went into Copilot Studio. And over here, in natural language, I just said, I want to create an agent to help me fix my car. This agent should be able to help troubleshoot any errors, work with maintenance and things like that. So if I just do that. Help me build an agent that can troubleshoot issues with my Mercedes-Benz and help with any maintenance checks. So you notice it's saying, cool, you want to create an agent for something like this. Do you want to give it a name? It's already suggested a name for me. I can just say, yeah, that sounds fine. Okay, then it's asking me, do you want it to perform any actions and things like that? So do I want to go update a document somewhere? Do I want to pull information? I can walk through this wizard. There's only a couple more left in here. Or I can just say, no, skip and straight to configure. So we're not going to do this again because I don't want to create another of the agent, but I can show you what's been created already. So it's this little guy over here. Again, I used that same format. I spoke and told it what I wanted to do. Kind of went an extra mile, put a little bit, I put a logo in there. I scrolled down. And then under knowledge, if you've noticed, that SharePoint site that I just showed you, where all the manuals are, I put that SharePoint site in there. So for any information you're looking, go look at that SharePoint site for me first. If I want to use maybe a PDF that I have, so the owner's manual, I had a copy of that. I uploaded that over here, so that's what this is.
Can you order those? Or does it matter?
It doesn't matter. Just put this on there. I can also upload any public websites that I own. Caveat that because trying to add a public website, it asks you if you're demo purpose. Make sure you're the owner of this site. So you're. So I've got that over here. And what I haven't completed yet is this first one called AutoHouse. So think of it as kind of like an O'Reilly AutoZone. My next step is to create some sort of automation that says, I'm looking for this part. Can you go search on this website and tell me if they have stock and place that order? I can tell it, you're okay to use AI to create some knowledge for me, or I can even turn this off. And that means, no, don't make up stuff based on the internet. I want you to look specifically at those documents that I told you to give me a response. So the same thing that's up over there, triggers, topics, starter prompts. You want to make this easy and accessible to everyone, right? So if I give this tool to somebody, they might not know what questions to ask. So I put some starter prompts on there. Things like, oh, my engine is overheating. What should I do? Or I've got a flat tire. I've got a check engine light. just to kind of help the end user that's using this agent and say, oh, okay, this is what I can ask it. This is what I can probably. So this is just a repetition of what's on the overview. So I've got my knowledge sites over here. I've got any topics that I've built, any actions. So for example, if I wanted to, if every time I create an event over here, I want to go update a SharePoint site or list. So I'm weird where anytime I do maintenance on my car, I update an Excel sheet so I can keep track of everything. The action over here is every time I do an oil change, go update my Excel sheet on date for today. Again, in the past, I used to go and open the sheet, put in today's date, make sure I've followed the same formatting of the date and time, versus now I can just talk to it and say, go ahead and update the log that I perform an oil change today. Notice I'm not giving it a date, I'm just saying today. But because I'm using natural language, it says I'm going to input today's date based on the format that's in this document.
Do I need to be explicit to say, update my log, or I can kind of trigger based on the context?
You can create the, so when we go into the triggers and things like that, you can say, if someone says log, know to go update this. You can even call it your maintenance playbook or something. As people use this, you will see an activity list of it. You can also get analytics. So because I copied this over from another environment, you don't really see a lot of action over here. But this would give you a good indication that says who's using this agent. There's also a satisfaction up and down. So you know, are people actually using this? Is this even useful? This is a good place for you to come back and say, ah, okay, this agent is good, or maybe we need to improve something. So there's a feedback in there. So once I create this agent, I can go ahead and I can publish this in different channels. So what can I do with it? I can put this in my team's chat. I can put this on a website. If I'm using Slack or something like that, I can also post it on there. I can sort of have a direct line, group me, things like that. So I personally have put this into a Teams chat. If you look over here, this is sort of the history where I've just had conversations with it. And if I want to make sure where it's getting its information from, I can just click on the source button and it will take me exactly to where it got that information. Now, I've added a public website on there too, which is a forum base. So I can also ask a question and say, hey, for this specific model, what are people on the forums doing, or is there a workaround for this issue? Because this service manual was created 35 years ago, that problem didn't exist back then. But now the marketplace of the forums for me. This is just an example of how you can create an agent, put it to a specific site, a document. Good. Page, questions?
Did you end up sharing that data back with the person that helped you out in Germany?
Yeah, so I did. I also shared the agent with him. And then I also got a list of some other documents from some guy in Canada. I've been trying to find who this person is just to kind of give him some credit. But I've looked on LinkedIn, I've sent emails, I haven't got a response. I kind of want to be like, hey, thank you, because you've sort of helped me.
Your sources.
Yeah.
You are saying that you turned off the AI generated solution or answer is just to prevent the AI hallucination things?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite
Yeah,
recognize.
you said that you prefer to turn off the AI generated answer thing. It's just to prevent AI hallucination.
No, it's not for preventing AI hallucination. And I originally turned it off. I don't want you giving me generic response on change on your car. Exactly what the manufacturer recommends. Look at the service manual and
Can you share what you did in the trigger?
I think So this one was just to go update a SharePoint list, I think is what I had in this example. Yeah, so I just had to add the request to a SharePoint list. My next action or goal is, and obviously my personal time is to create something that says, I'm looking to do an oil change, go ahead and add these parts, shopping cart, ready for me to just check out. Rather than me going to this website, putting the part number, create a cart for me and check out. So I'm not a big fan of showing canned demos because sometimes I feel like these are very controlled environments, but this was something personal that I've used, and this is it. This is what the final product looks like after I've been restoring for the last 2 years. Everyone said it's a good use case. You should share it with your customers. And I thought that was kind of a good use case. Again, I'm not a developer. I'm not a coder, right? This is low code, no code solutions that I've just used, just a bunch of files in a create solution.
BMW people are Beamers, so what is a Mercedes-Benz guy? What do they call him?
I got a question for you. So on those triggers, building on one of the earlier questions, you could create a snow ticket from those triggers, right?
Yeah. So it would be something like go ahead and update ticket.
There's connectors for cells for all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there's a bunch of connectors.
Out of the box, as I understand it, is that right?
Yeah, I haven't seen what the ServiceNow connectors and things like that.
Okay.
There's a lot of them.
I think there's a bunch of them.
I think that's a little bit of a, right, M365 Copilot, how I can create the agents. I'm not going to go into AI Foundry today because I think
How are the agents built on, like, for example, on a SharePoint site, different from the agents that you build on a Copilot Studio or the ones that you build, in some other environment?
very, very good. So the question was, how is it different when I create an agent? So when I created that agent in a SharePoint site, we're just selecting those bunch of those files. It creates another file within the same SharePoint sort of website. And if you've noticed, it's got its own sort of extension, right? A Word file's extension is docx, Excel file is xlsx. If I create a custom agent, it's going to be a .agent. Anyone can come into the SharePoint site, click on this agent, it launches the page. Within 30 seconds, I've created an agent for all my documents in here, and I can ask it any questions, really. When I create, so essentially, this is also using Copilot Studio, but it's a light version. It's an easy version. When I create something completely in Copilot Studio, I can then publish that in Teams through the Admin Center. So I can create an actual solution. And if I'm a Microsoft provider, I could just make a nice product and then sell it to my different customers and things like that, and then sell that on the marketplace. But I think the focus is more like, let me create something for my organization and let everyone in my organization use it. You can also take another step further and say, hey, we built this for Exxon or Chevron or something like that. I'd like to sell this to other customers.
I have a follow-up to that one. So so now I have people creating their own agents on SharePoints. Is there a way to search for agents? Like, how do I index and keep track of the growing number of agents?
Yeah, so we're sort of working on something like that, where we don't want to have so many agents that people are creating. So it's like dashboards and things. If you've heard the word agentic AI and agents, so what we're looking to do is create an agent for your specific workflow use case. Over time, we'll get all these agents together, and then maybe they can work autonomously. If you're working sort of in frontline or just working directly with the customers, if they put in a request about something, now it has to go to a back-end team to do refunds. And right now there might be two separate agents, but at some stage we might come together, have a seamless work. How many of you have called AT&T today, right? If your service goes down, you go first to the help desk. If that doesn't happen, then it goes you to a dispatch, so you just send someone out. They have to call someone else to get their equipment out and things like that. But imagine if that was a seamless sort of operation. So we're helping even some of those providers like that, creating agents, small agents within their workflow. And then over time, create this big agent that talks to all the other agents. Once this happens, pick off this other workflow. This happens.
Are you saying that this kind of like a team of 8 different agents already available or not yet? Are you saying you mentioned that you kind of a team of different agents?
Yeah.
It's already available or not yet?
Yeah, so all of what I showed you today is all GA, general availability. So you can go ahead and you can just create your own agents and things like that. We are also creating agents. So for example, what you notice is, yeah, we've given our customers Copilot, but some of them don't know what to do with it. So we created an agent called employee self-service. You can, once you see that available in your tenant, you can say, okay, our data sits in ADP or Workday or something. Create that connector.
So basically what I'm saying, how you let the different agent coordinate it.
Oh, the coordination of those different agents. That is sort of more coming in the next few months. And you can use Power Automate right now, and you can help connect those two manually if you want to, but yeah. So just to make sure you guys also are sort of aware, I think somebody, I think it was him that asked the question. Different models do different things. The latest model, which is 4.0, very good at doing certain things. But what if I want to use a reasoning model, right? I just don't want to read data. I want to understand what the data is doing, compare it to something through an Excel sheet, things like that. So we've created these specific agents. So 2 of them being analyst and research, which we're releasing out here in a month or 2, which are going to be available to you. I've got a couple of videos.
I'm Michelle. I'm excited to show you researcher agent in Copilot. Recent advances in LLMs allow AI to contribute like a team member. We've taken one of these models, OpenAI's O3 Deep Research, along with advanced orchestration in Copilot and deep search algorithms, and optimized it. So I need help developing a strategy for our expansion. I enter my prompt and researcher gets to work. It asks clarifying questions as a seasoned colleague would and uses my response to move forward. The agent takes my prompt, understands the task, and constructs a plan to reach an answer. You'll notice it reasoning over all of my work data in the Microsoft Graph, not just one file. Here, we can see its chain of thought reasoning. You'll see it working through the problem in real time. It builds an understanding of my product lineup, references recent meetings, and even pulls industry updates from the web. This process takes a few minutes, so let's jump ahead to the result. I got a really thorough response, in line with what I expect from a researcher on my own team. I can edit it in Pages where I can bring in my team to collaborate. What we just saw, built on the Microsoft Graph and the web. The researcher can also be connected to third-party data via connectors and can leverage other agents, like the sales agent,
to connect to its rich data and access its logic. Only Copilot knows what matters to you at work, and researcher taps into that. It knows what's most recent and what files and data are relevant to you. With researcher, now every employee has access to expertise.
So that's one of the two new agents that we'll be releasing. So researcher and agent.
Yeah, something not related to the video. So you say that it's possible to connect like Copilot to different CRMs, but is it possible to make use of data that lies in Azure Warehouse or Azure Blob Storage, or I need to just format like CSV files and throw JSONs to CSV and throw them in SharePoint, for example, to make use of them?
Yeah, so M365 Copilot sort of leverages a lot of the structured data. So got structured data and things like that, then yeah, we'll have to go through different methods in that data in. That would be more for AI foundries. So I would
So there would be no difference between Azure like solutions and S3 storage, for example, AWS S3 storage, right? So it will be the same things.
essentially. I hope that was
Yeah,
helpful.
last chance for questions before we do the old shepherd's crook here. Any more? All right. Did anyone learn anything? All right, worth your time. Thank you, Aramis. Thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate it. Hope everyone got something out of it. We're going to a few minutes of chit chat if you like, and then we're going to head on out. But thanks for all coming out. Next month we have FinOps in Azure for a much more Azure-y next month. So saving money in Azure is our focus. Thanks for all coming out. Hope to see you next month.